Alrighty, well, let's get started then, since we only have about 20-25 minutes for this session. My name is Chala Çelik, and I'm a career development specialist with West Virginia University Career Services Center. And my job is essentially helping students being the best version of themselves whenever they are in the career development process, applying for positions, creating resumes to reflect their skills and qualifications as a good candidate. So one of the things that a student can use to make themselves even more competitive is obviously study abroad. And today in this 20 to 25 minute session, I will briefly talk about what it is about study abroad that would make you a competitive candidate, and would employers in the field even care about education abroad experiences. So maybe let's start with a hypothetical scenario of, let's say you spend a semester trekking through the mountains of Paraguay and maybe traversing the Venezuelan valley. You met locals who spend their entire lives in that area and even volunteered at an elementary school to get different insights. So you come back home brimming with new information and like international insights that you wouldn't have had you not chosen to go study abroad. So what do you do with it? How do you show this on your resume? Or do employers even care about these things? And well, you've probably been through a lot and gained a lot of skills and strengthened the even current skill sets that you might have, but how are you going to communicate them? That's what we're going to talk about today. So first and foremost, how will employers evaluate your study abroad experiences? How do you convincingly sell yourself and your international experience? And how will you communicate the lessons learned and skills gained while you were abroad? And that's what we're going to talk about today. The most important thing is, though, let's say you put together a great elevator pitch and kind of pitch your skills and experiences. Will they care about it? Let's talk about that first. Well, good news to you is that most employers view international experience as a positive, almost universally. And when I found out that I was going to give this presentation, I had our employee relations team here at Career Services Center reach out to a few employers to get testimonials from them to see what they thought of international experience whenever they saw this on candidate's resume. So I picked two, and throughout this presentation, you'll find some of these testimonials. This is from Travis Ritchie, Human Resources of GE Aviation. And again, it's pretty bright. They almost universally look at it as a, good experience, because overcoming challenges living and working abroad, like going without your support system, building trust and problem solving in new environments, adapting to different working and studying practices, increase your resourcefulness. And experiencing a different culture, a work environment, a study environment, maybe dealing with a foreign language, make you more interesting and skillful. So almost universally, they perceive this experience as a positive. And don't take it from me. I went and kind of digged into some of the data and looked into past surveys. One of the surveys done in the field, which is biggest on the subject, is conducted by QS Global Employer Survey Report. And this report showed that 6 out of 10 employers actually viewed study abroad experiences as favorable. And they said that basically 80% of indicated that they saw graduates with study abroad experiences. The other data on the subject is by NACE, which is the National Association for Colleges and Employers. And so for a general graduate, a general alumni, only 49% of them found employment within the first 12 months of their graduation, versus 95% of the alumni with international experience. So again, based on data, you also kind of get an edge in the job market in terms of finding employment more quickly with study abroad experiences. And the other thing is that the average starting salary for most graduates is around $45,000 based on the 2014 data. And study abroad basically gives you a $7,000 more or less competitive edge and an increase in starting salary. The other thing is that these these alumni with international experience also indicated in this survey that almost 80% of them, that their international experience actually helped them gain their first employment. So this is huge. The data, again, shows favorably, and it's just a great experience for you. But at the same time, is there a time when it is unfavorable? I guess one word of caution here is that the world is not black and white. You will never get 100% support from everybody in things that you do. There might be some employers who don't necessarily look at it favorably. And if you face with, those type of people, don't be surprised, because again, everybody is not going to appreciate everything the same level. But there's another kind of survey that went out by Collegiate Employment Research Institute, and it showed that some of the employers don't look at it favorably because they consider it as academic tourism. And this is primarily stemmed from the fact that most students have difficulty communicating their experiences abroad. I mean, you may have the most beautiful, the most competitive, experience, and you may have developed really great skills, but if you can't communicate these things convincingly and intelligently with employers, it just creates unfavorable impressions and they may not see the value in it. So again, it's not just, many employers have an idea of what skills and kind of qualifications you develop while being abroad, but it's your job to sell them your experiences, okay? And at that point, another point, the point that I would like to make is that study abroad can definitely help your career. I mean, I've shown you through data, shown you through testimonials, but it's never a standalone statement on your resume, meaning most employers like to see a diverse resume, including different experiences from, again, study abroad, maybe some relevant internships, leadership experiences. And you can't just rely on your study abroad experiences alone to give you, get you a job and kind of employers to accept you with open arms. You need to diversify it a little bit, and that's really important to do so. All right. So how about different industries when it comes to study abroad? Well, there might be some industries that value it more than others, and they may also have favorite destinations too. Now, I'm not an expert in this, but if somebody's studying art history and did a study abroad in Italy, I feel like that's a pretty, that makes a statement on their resume. Political science, fashion, environmental science, foreign languages, photography, architecture. These majors want to see you gain different insights and experiences from different countries about your chosen major, because they're global, they really value that kind of global mindset and insights when it comes to being successful in these majors. It's not to say that majors on the right-hand side don't support study abroad. The only difference here would be a study abroad experience would still be kind of favorable on your resume if you're an engineering, management, nursing, finance student, but know that certain majors have really strict, study schedules that may not allow students to get involved in a lot of extracurriculars. Sometimes their summers are even scheduled for field experience. Like in nursing, you have to gain like so many clinical hours, etc. So that is to say that you can still go and gain study abroad experiences, but make sure then you also fulfill the requirements of your major of gaining the clinical hours or gaining, obtaining a relevant internship in the field to make your resume even more competitive. For example, if finance major has a really strict, schedule of study, and if you went to financial hubs like, I don't know, Hong Kong, Tokyo, London, to do your study abroad, and even maybe had a shadowing week or did a small internship, that's going to exponentially improve the value assigned to your study abroad experiences by a potential employer. So think about those things too, and always think about field and major related experiences you should gain here at your home country or abroad, kind of in conjunction with the cultural experiences and kind of life skills that study abroad has to offer to you. So I hope that makes sense. Now, the main question becomes, let me change my slide here. The main question essentially becomes, how to effectively highlight study abroad experiences. What key skills and qualifications do employers actually care about? This is from another survey that was conducted back in 2011, and it shows that whenever employers hire new candidates, they are looking at these 4 key areas: ability to verbally communicate with persons inside or outside of the organization, ability to make decisions and solve problems, ability to plan, organize, and prioritize work, and ability to obtain and process information, which can also be thought as critical thinking skills. Now, here's the good news for you. You literally gain all of these skills by studying abroad, but you really need to sit down and think how you can potentially relate your experiences to these key areas. Now, it could be a little abstract for you. You may not know how to do that. So I kind of identified some key areas that would fulfill the requirements of these, these specific skills in relation with study abroad. Now, these are some of the skills that you gain by studying abroad. This is not an exhaustive list. You gain even many more after these things that I put on the slide. You just need to sit down and think about it. And on the right-hand side, there's another testimonial by Ryan Stannard from Peace Corps. So the number one thing that I want to highlight here is global experience. When you study abroad, you more or less study the same curriculum as your stay-at-home peers. But the people who surround you are completely different. So every day kind of brings different challenges and different experiences that you wouldn't have here at home. And given that, basically, you are learning at a double, kind of like the rate you learn new information or gain new experience is almost a double the amount that your stay-at-home peers kind of gain. So you learn things not just from a textbook, but rather this experience opens doors to a whole different world for you. So that's global experience. The other thing is obviously cultural awareness. The ability to absorb and adapt to a new culture is highly desirable in a workplace. And by studying abroad, you gain cultural sensitivity that is difficult to garner without kind of being exposed to different cultures, right? So employers, employees, clients, consumers, they all come from different backgrounds. And to be able to understand that and appreciate and honor their experiences kind of give you a perspective of appreciating differences and similarities without assigning a value to them. And that's really important when it comes to the workplace. The other thing is courage. Obviously, it takes guts to step outside of your comfort zone and move to a different part of the world. And employers appreciate the courage that you must have mustered to be able to put yourself through this experience. This is especially true if you elected to go to a culture where the language is different and the culture is drastically different, then it kind of highlights the fact that you can overlook obstacles to see potential gain. And that's really important. So the other skill that you can highlight either in interviews or on your resume is the problem solving skills. Now, living abroad throws you all kinds of hardship and difficulties, right? New roommates, new host families, a different language, foreign government bureaucracies. If you're trying to work, maybe some paperwork or employment restrictions related problems. And if you lived abroad for at least a couple of months, chances are you will have overcome some of these, problems and some of these issues. And employers know that with each difficulty or with each challenge kind of conquered, your confidence and problem solving grows, and a confident confident employee is an important and valuable asset to any organization. So you should really highlight employer problem solving skills in that sense, in your experiences and your resume. The other thing is self-sufficiency. Well, studying under the support of your parents or lifelong friends may be an easy option. It would kind of give you an opportunity to focus on your studies, but it doesn't necessarily scream self-sufficiency, right? And the further away you go from your home and from your support network, you kind of become increasingly more independent, whether it be consoling yourself through a breakup or kind of working through financial hardships and difficulties on your own. It's basically making you more autonomous, and your ability and capability to manage yourself speaks volumes to employers if you can kind of gain that kind of self-sufficiency. The other thing that you should highlight as a skill is perspective, because studying abroad opens your mind in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. Even in seemingly similar cultures, there are major differences that kind of shape you as a person. Stay in your sheltered bubble under the protection of your childhood friends or parents. You may not really discover the real you. So perspective is a wonderful thing that will allow you to be more creative and open in the workplace. And that's really, really appreciated. Now, the other thing is obviously appreciation. The fact that you've chosen to gain experience abroad to better yourself in your industry's community shows that you not only have appreciation for diversity, but also an appreciation for what every individual brings to the table. To be able to see value and alternate experiences shows that you'll be a great team player, because you are likely to recognize the importance of different opinions and customs in the workplace. So that right there is really, really important from an appreciation standpoint. The other thing is initiative. Obviously, the opportunity to study abroad doesn't just fall onto your lap, right? You actively go out and seek it. You look into financial implications. You do research on visas and restrictions. You search employment and housing opportunities. So you don't just, go and hope for the best. You actually take the time to evaluate the risks involved, but you're able to seeing past the risks by, again, focusing on the potential gain and potential future qualifications that this experience will grant you with. And that is really huge. So these are some of the things that you need to highlight whenever you speak to a potential employer on your resume or even in an interview setting. And you may not know how to effectively do that just yet. And that's why the second half of this session is dedicated for understanding how to highlight these skills on your resume, how to show these qualifications on your cover letter, and then how to intelligently and actually convincingly speak to these experiences in an interview setting. But my takeaways for you right now, sorry about that. My takeaways for you right now is that study abroad is viewed positively by most employers and it helps with your career development. But remember this, it's never a standalone testament. You need to supplement your experiences with internships, volunteer experiences, maybe some leadership roles by being president of your student organization or being on the board. So don't just, again, go study abroad and hope that it's going to be the number one determining factor of you being competitive in the job market, and kind of employers will accept you into their roles with open arms. You have to be as diverse as a candidate as possible. And the most important thing here, if you're not taking anything else from this session, the most important thing is to be able to sell your experiences. Again, all of these things are amazing and great, but if you can effectively communicate these things to an employer, as I said, they're just gonna view it as culture, academic tourism, kind of like, great, you gained those cultural experiences, but how is that going to benefit my organization? So with that, do we have any questions from any students? If not, we can take a break for 5 minutes and then resume with the resumes, cover letters, and interviews, and how to show your study abroad experience on those documents.
That was a great presentation. Thank you so much for giving it.
Yeah,
Let's see.
of course.
I don't see any questions in the chat here. So.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Okay, so I will wait for about 5 minutes, or if you want, I can just jump right into it. Totally up to you guys, or we can just continue at 11:30. What would you prefer?
Take 5. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for coming, Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah, I will pause my video and mic and we'll resume in. You're muted.
Yes, I will be recording the session again.
Okay, sounds great. Well, let's get started then. All right, now that we talked about how amazing the kind of skills you gained and how to effectively, market them, you might be asking, well, do you put study abroad on a resume? And the answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, using your resume to showcase those international experiences, the most direct way of, communicating your experiences and skills to a potential employer. So what you gain while navigating a foreign country, learning about different customs and languages, is more than just occasional headache. You gain skills, and skills that make you extremely, applicable, skills that are extremely applicable to modern workplace and to many professional positions that will be valued a lot. Now, here's a word of caution. Not all resumes are created equally, meaning if you are someone with 5+ years of experience in the industry, you will then have an executive resume for mid-career professionals. And in that resume, obviously your potential employer, if you're trying to switch jobs, don't care as much about your study abroad experiences from 10 years ago because you are a mid-career professional. You will want to still mention your study abroad experience, maybe in the education section, maybe have a few bullets. Don't completely discard it. But again, the prioritization will look a little different for those type of resumes versus if you are an average student. An average student usually means minimal to no experience, and they will use not real world full-time positions on the resume, but rather other type of engagement to show their transferable skills. So if you are a new grad or maybe an alumni in the field for 1 or 2 years, then you should absolutely highlight your study abroad experiences all throughout your resume. So let's move forward to the next slide. Now we're going to talk about where and how, where and how you put study abroad on your resume, what skills to focus when describing your international experience, and how to incorporate your study abroad into a cover letter or even use those experiences in an interview setting. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this slide. Before I dive deeper into the study abroad resumes, I would like to give you a general overview of what resumes should look like. And I know this is not a how to build a resume presentation, but I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention some of these key rules to follow whenever you're creating your resume. First and foremost, you have one page to tell your story. It is highly unfavorable in the industry if you have more than a page resume. So you really need to keep it clean, concise, and tailored towards each position. Because honestly, we all know that you have multiple skills, you have multiple qualifications. But if you are highlighting the not so relevant ones on your resume while overlooking the qualifications that are really, really important, then that resume is not going to serve you right. That's why it's really important for you to read every single job description that you're applying to, and then always make tweaks and like changes on your resume to tailor for each position to reflect things that they actually care about. Now, the other thing that you really need to be conscientious of is that your resume should be factual and honest. Don't ever exaggerate or over exaggerate the skills that you currently have. For example, the most applicable one, or one of the most applicable ones for you guys, would be language skills and abilities. And this is a real story that happened about 2.5 years ago now. One of my students, he was studying Chinese for a few semesters at that point and included Chinese as proficient on his resume. Well, come to the interviewer was a native Mandarin speaker, and it just turned out to be a huge disaster. Now, shouldn't he have indicated his language skills on his resume? No, absolutely he should have. Even if it's beginner level, you still need to have that skill demonstrated on your resume, but you really need to indicate the level of proficiency in an accurate manner. So if you're only speaking Spanish for a semester and that may have improved while you're abroad, you can then maybe use an indicator that says upper intermediate level or intermediate level versus bilingual native proficiency, depending on where you are. So you really need to be factual and honest. It needs to be easy to read because nowadays, on average, each employee receives about 250 resume, and they're not going to sit down and spend, minutes or even hours on each resume. They look at it for about 10 seconds. And in that 10 seconds, if they can't find the relevant information, if it's not easy to read or navigate, they're just going to skip on to the next candidate. So you don't want to put your foot in the mouth, like with using some of those handwritten, weird Comic Sans and mess type fonts on Microsoft Word. When in doubt, try to stick with Times New Roman, the official APA style, font style, or Calibri. Like, try to stick with something original or something that's preferred, whenever you log into Microsoft Word. The other thing is consistent formatting and punctuation. As I said, they're looking for reasons to eliminate you to ultimately find the most qualified candidate. So you don't want to give them any reasons to, write you off in terms of like grammatical errors, inconsistencies, problems with punctuation. So you really need to keep getting this document reviewed by different professionals to make sure that it is reflecting you and your qualifications to the best it can. The other thing is that the font size, you can go as little as 10.5, even 10 in the content, but the headers, the name can be up to 16 point, and the headers can obviously be a little bit bigger than the general text overall. And you really need to use a professional email address. If your mixed account is perfectly fine while you're a student, but once you graduate, I highly urge you to get a Gmail account with a variation of your first and last name. That's an ideal situation. Don't use email addresses that, that's like Mountaineer fan, or I had some really bad ones. Let's just say that. Don't use them. Don't use nicknames or other things. Make sure it's professional. And also make sure your voicemail, automatic voicemail system in your phone is updated. Make sure it is empty and not full, because there's nothing more annoying to an employer who is wanting to offer you a position, call you, it goes to voicemail, and the voicemail box is full and it just hangs up on them. It's happened a few times with some of my students. So keep them kind of clean and professional too, especially if you are going to do a greeting message, make sure that's also professional. Okay, so that's my spiel about resumes in general, but mind you, I give presentations about this for an hour, so this is not by any means all the information that you need. This is just a brief overview, because our focus today is not to how to build resumes, but how to showcase your study abroad experiences on your resume. Okay. Now, what are the steps for you to effectively showcase your study abroad experiences on your resume? Step number one is sit down and think. Literally think about your experiences, because kind of sift through your materials and conduct some extensive self-reflection on the people you met, the places you saw, and the experiences that stuck out to you. Did a certain situation catch you off guard? If so, why, when, how? Were you surprised by your ability to successfully communicate with others in a language that you've only been studying for a year? Remember that time you mastered public transportation system in Tokyo after literally stressing about getting lost for an hour? Analyze your experiences to identify your skills. Go through photos, journals, blogs that you kept during your trip. Because if you can't identify them, obviously, if you can't reflect on your newfound capabilities, communication skills, and global mindset, well, you can't really communicate those things effectively to other people. Having a clear interpretation of your experience will prove beneficial when it's time to craft your resume, including study abroad details. Now, the second step is, now that you've gathered all records of your trip, condense your experiences into a few keywords or phrases that encompass the skills you used abroad. Some of these may include, again, I had a huge list for you, and I will share these presentations with Megan after I'm done, and you can refer back to that slide, and you can kind of condense your experiences into those phrases of problem solving, money management, language skills, or even cross-cultural communication, and then kind of create those buzzwords and skills, because ultimately your resume is a really condensed, abbreviated version. So you should use those type of things instead of writing a novel to initially reflect your skills on a resume. Okay, so if you did other things while studying abroad, for example, teaching, volunteering, maybe having relevant internships in your field, don't just stick to the skills section or the education section. And I will show you here in a second on what sections on your resume you can highlight your study abroad experiences. But make sure if you've had those type of experiences along with study abroad, make sure you create bullet points explaining those type of experiences at the beginning using powerful action verbs like developed, facilitated, volunteer, created, cultivated, cultivated, not waited, cultivated, organized, planned on your resume, and create bullet points describing, maybe giving short descriptions of your experience and what you did. With, again, limited amount of space, be concise with your descriptions, and your diction really, really matters. Well, the third thing here, which is blocked by my control, let me move this. The third thing is obviously organize powerful study abroad resume bullets and qualifications, and we will now place them into the appropriate sections on our resume.